just for a brief introduction, since we missed that in the beginning, we're also honored Professor Ramamurthy is Padma Bhushan. He's a nuclear scientist and S&T administrator, and very, very much committed to science and technology education and bringing right education to the country. And so many interesting points being brought up by Professor Kak and Professor Ramamurthy. There is like in fact, Bhaskar even talks about this in the introduction to the book. This is like the skeptic's curve. We are our own biggest skeptics as we begin. I also was educated in technology, when, in fact, Bhaskar and I share the same institute. We both went to IIT Kanpur. And even when I'm talking to my friends there, or even how I was, it was very easy to dismiss it because we've been almost conditioned, brought up, and to use that much used term, really colonized in the mind, where when somebody says, like, guess what, algebra came from India, we're like, nah. It's like, oh, you're just making things up. This story doesn't make sense. Where is the evidence? Nobody has written about it. And when we say nobody, it means somebody in the West has not stamped this as knowledge. And even if they have, it's not become widestream or mainstream enough for it to be accepted. And I remember Professor C.K. Raju making this really interesting comment, who's also done wonderful work on mathematics. We've all been inspired with him, by him, and Bhaskar references his work many times. And he says, the narrative requires no proof. It is self-evident. The counter narrative requires volumes of proof because there's nothing needed to prove that, Euclid wrote the elements or Pythagoras invented the theorem. It's like, oh, it's like, duh, every child knows this. What's even there to prove about it, right? So we don't ask for evidence. We don't even say, okay, where is the evidence that this happened? But when we have to disprove it, we need to marshal mountain loads of evidence, say, well, this doesn't really add up, and here's the evidence, and here's the evidence. So the challenge of those who are challenging the narrative is in a way much greater than just repeating what has already been said, and much of that actually does not have real evidence behind it. So the other thing that really struck me was, even everybody says, okay, well, Indians invented zero. What's the big deal? It's just a big fat zero. So we kind of make it a null operator. We nullify it. But even for me, it took me a while to have that significance sink in. It's just not another number. But without that, there is no decimal system. And what our forefathers did, or our ancestors did, was really to create the entire decimal system, without which no modern mathematics or modern science is possible. And so the way, one question to ask somebody simply is, write down 32,566 in Roman numerals and then square it. Can you show how you're going to square this, right? And then you realize there's actually no way to do it, because what happened was not only that we invented zero, not only did we create the decimal system, we made mathematics algorithmic. So there could be an algorithm. In fact, this is the debate that Bhaskar brings up so nicely in the book, that they were the abacus and the algorithmics. So they were the people who were using algorithms to solve math, and there were the people who were using the abacus to solve math. And there was a contest in Europe for a long period of time, till the algorithmics were just so much superior that they won out. But it was a period of almost 200 years before Europe could even accept zero and accept or understand the concepts that Indian mathematics was developing. And so it's not zero, and it's not even just the decimal system, but really the whole system by which we compute in mathematics. So that's why all of arithmetic comes from there. And then if you look at the decimal system itself is a polynomial. It's a polynomial to the power of 10, right? That's how the number expands. So that's so you really have to start understanding algebra to even construct the decimal system. And then of course the symbolic notation and all of this is well known. But when Bhaskar came up to me and said, well, we had algebraic equations, I was like, no, don't tell me that. Show me. How did they write an equation? So we went back into the sources and said, okay, this is exactly how they were writing an equation. It was written vertically. And the book has examples of how the equations were written. So we went back and made it, much more real and tangible. And so that we can actually look at the algorithm, we can look at the Sanskrit verses, and we can wrestle with it, and we can really come up with, all of these possibilities and the way that they had put it together. The story of so many of the mathematics was tied to, of course, the geometry for altars and Vedic rituals, but there was also poetics becoming so much central part of how the mathematics came about. And then of course there was the observations in terms of astronomy, and how those tied back the calendrical system, and how those tied back to the development of mathematics. So